like this nature, life, thisness is expressing all these human beings this way with these characteristics, with these, with this feeling of identification, which is feeling of a self, which is feeling of separation. It's happening. And so I've sort of come to the place where it's like, embrace it all. And in that, there is this background processing, this conditioning that seems to be very, very strong. And it is worthwhile, I think, looking into it and helping that be not so powerful in its manipulation of our feeling of being a separate self. So meditation, I think, is very useful. Once you're at a sort of, once it's let go and seen itself as what it is, all that activity is just blossoming in life. It doesn't matter if all these characteristics still play and have, things that happen, and it's like, oh yeah, there was frustration today, or anger, or blissful peace, or whatever happens. It's just all old reactivity, and it's a human being a body, being a life, being a biology expressing. So whatever. It does tend to have less reactivity as it sort of calms down and is more peaceful, as it doesn't react to its story all the time. That's for sure. And the separate self that we have created can aid in that, which we've talked about before. But as far as, there was a period here where it all changed and the perspective changed and it was all different, and the feeling for meditation dropped away. I don't think I meditated very much for a while, but I had done a lot of meditation for a number of many years. But that's just characters that have, I see it as, there's no choice in any of that. That was just the background, what I was exposed to, everything playing. Being okay with learning how resistance is working and seeing that, and all of this happens in the background. These are not the things that create an awakening, a self-realization, or realization of the separate self as an illusion. But for me, John being a quite controlling character, they were very useful to create the relaxation of that background processing that allowed this, as a human experience, it's just part of the biology. Nothing has to be gotten rid of. It's just seen as this, expressing this way with these characteristics, and it's okay. And just what seems to happen is those characteristics are no longer being fed in frustration, suffering and anger and whatever from this separate self entity that's just not there. It's not believed. There's an echo of remnant entity that plays in the background thought processes, and I think that's all subconscious, but that gets less and less believed and less reacted to as this seems to calm. And I think that's the ongoing journey. And I think people perhaps like Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta, I remember hearing Bernie put me onto I Am That, which I had never read, but I have listened to it now as an audiobook, and it's just like the whole thing now, and it's just like, oh yeah that's such a beautifully put way. But when even he was he took 3 or 4 years of just intensively focusing on I am that, who am I, and until I think the background conditioning calmed down to such the state that it didn't interfere anymore in his abiding presence. It's not even his, you know what I mean? It's just the abiding open nature, appreciation. The background conditioning of the mind was already in an open state and stayed that way most of the time. I didn't meet him, so I can't really reference, but that's what it appears from listening to the way he explained things. But for the mere mortal human beings that are sort of looking into this and playing in this life, it's all the same thing anyway, really. There's just different expressions of it. I think that background processing, the conditioning, is such an important part of the ongoing liberation process, but also if somebody is completely abidingly open and just has no identification as a separate self, and they're just a human body and life expressing, and they don't do anything but sit and, as some people say, hold space or vibration for the rest of humanity, that's the way that's being expressed as part of life, as part of this expression, as part of this manifestation, I suppose, of form. And there'll be all different gradations of people, right up to completely identified, stressy, people, and there'll be people in the middle who might be blending this or working with this. But it seems like whatever nature's doing, whatever life is doing, is what's supposed to be happening. Because if we don't think it's that, it's just the mind thinking it knows better than the universe, life. And that's the exploration that I find fascinating. So I've actually ended up coming back from, I suppose, the idea of no need to do any meditation anymore because it's all good, to, well, it's like there seems to be two things that are happening. Exploration of the meditation and the background conditioning has become more interesting now because I'm speaking about it with people who are exploring this as well. So it's a dual thing. It's to keep the deepening process opening, and there's a health aspect to it. As as far as life goes, there can be still very peaceful times most of the time, but then in the doing of life, which is necessary as a human being to earn a living and get things done, and I've got daughters and I manage family and all these things, there are still times where tension creeps in. It's not even known. And meditation is a beautiful tool just from a purely health aspect to just let that tension express itself and burn out, and also allow the conditioning that's still there to be seen. It's just that it's known it's known more than intellectually that conditioning and that background processes, it's known that it's seen, this is seen, that's not real. It's just thoughts. So when they arrive, it's now like, it's okay. It's okay, you darling thing, you can do that. It's okay. But that's a funny, quirky, eccentric, old habit pattern that's arriving, that's expressing again, it doesn't matter. And that's kind of loving as well. So there's no conflict in that imperfection.